Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When a solitary man builds a towering gate to guard his slice of desert peace, he sparks a war with a power-hungry HOA president hell-bent on control. What begins as a property dispute explodes into a battle of wills, lies, and legal fire, and only one will be left standing. I've always been the kind of guy who minds his own business. I'm not the neighborhood BBQ type, I don't do block parties, and I sure as hell don't like people telling me what to do with my own land. That's exactly why I bought this place, a quiet corner lot on the edge of a so-called planned community in Arizona. Technically, I'm not even in the HOA's jurisdiction. My property line is a sliver beyond their grasp, and I made sure of that before I ever signed the papers. I like the idea of being close enough to civilization to get a pizza delivered, but far enough away that no one could knock on my door demanding I repaint my mailbox desert sand beige. After moving in, I spent the better part of 6 months restoring the house and reclaiming the overgrown lot. The previous owner had basically let the place rot. Cracked stucco, dead trees, sagging chain link fence. It took blood, sweat, and more cursing than I'd care to admit, but it finally started to look like something worth protecting. That's when I decided to install a gate. Not just any gate, a heavy, matte black wrought iron beast with a sliding motorized track, keypad entry, and security cameras perched like gargoyles. I wasn't just keeping out stray dogs and Amazon packages. I was making a statement. This land is mine. You're not welcome to stroll across it like it's a community jogging trail. The gate went up on a Monday morning. By lunchtime, I was sitting on my porch, sipping coffee and admiring my work, when I saw her, tan heels clicking against the pavement like she was marching into a courtroom. She had the build of a gym teacher with the face of a disappointed guidance counselor, and she was armed with an iPad. I'd never met her before, but I already knew who she was. "Excuse me," she called out, voice tight like a violin string. "Are you the homeowner here?" I stood up. "Yep, can I help you?" "I'm Karen Reed, president of the Desert Bloom Homeowners Association," she said, as if I should salute. I just nodded. "And?" Her eyes narrowed as she looked past me at the new gate. "You can't keep that up." I smiled. "Why not?" "It doesn't conform to the aesthetic standards of our community," she said, waving the iPad in the air. "We require neutral-tone aluminum fencing, 4 feet maximum, no solid surfaces. That," she pointed at my gate like it had insulted her, "is completely unacceptable." "I'm not in the HOA," I replied, cool as the other side of the pillow. "You guys stopped 3 houses down. My parcel's outside the zone. Always has been." "That's not what my map shows." I raised an eyebrow. "You should probably get a better map." Without saying another word, she turned on her heel and stomped off like she had personally been assaulted by wrought iron. I figured that was the end of it. Foolish optimism on my part. 2 days later, I woke up to find a folded piece of paper taped to my gate. A formal HOA violation notice, complete with HOA letterhead, a fine of $200, and a deadline of 10 days to remove unauthorized architectural features. My property address was printed in bold. I laughed out loud and tossed it in the trash. Then I pulled up the deed and the county zoning map, scanned everything into a PDF, and emailed it to the HOA address listed on their website. I even threw in a line that said, "Please update your records. This isn't your circus." I didn't get a response, which was fine by me, but I should have known Karen wasn't the type to retreat when facts got in the way of her power trip. On Saturday, around 9 in the morning, a white pickup truck with HOA inspections magnetically slapped to the side rolled up in front of my house. A guy in khakis and mirrored sunglasses got out and started taking pictures of my gate, my driveway, even the side of my house. I walked out barefoot, coffee in hand. "Can I help you?" "Just conducting a compliance check," he said, as if he were with the Department of Homeland Security. I laughed. "You've got the wrong address. This isn't HOA property. You can turn around and go back to whatever tract house Karen summoned you from." He kept snapping photos until I pulled out my phone and started filming. That got him moving. By the time the sun set that evening, I knew this wasn't going away. I checked the local neighborhood Facebook group, something I normally avoid like moldy cheese, and found Karen's handiwork front and center. A post from her account read, "Concerned about the safety and visual consistency of our beautiful neighborhood. A certain resident has installed a large, non-compliant gate, potentially impacting property values. We will be addressing this. Hundreds of comments. Some neighbors asked for details. Some supported her. Others told her to chill. One guy wrote, "It's literally his land. Who cares?" I made a mental note to buy that guy a beer. But the seed had been planted. The looks from passing cars changed. Where I used to get casual nods, I now got narrowed eyes and disapproving glances. I wasn't just the new guy anymore. I was the one ruining the aesthetic. Fine, I thought. Let's play. The HOA's silence lasted for all of 3 days. Then came the first email. The subject line read, "Urgent. Violation of Desert Bloom architectural standards." The message itself was almost poetic in its absurdity. Failure to comply will result in penalties and further enforcement action. It was signed, of course, by Carrie. Read with her name typed in bold like she was the mayor of hell. I replied with a single sentence, "I am not, nor have I ever been, a member of your HOA." I attached the county property map again and hit send. By Friday, a bright yellow flyer appeared on my front porch. Community meeting, agenda, neighborhood aesthetics, and non-compliant structures. The meeting was scheduled for Sunday evening at the Desert Bloom Clubhouse. I wasn't invited, obviously, but my address was right there in black ink, so I showed up anyway. The room was packed with retirees clutching reusable water bottles and folded printouts of bylaws. Karen stood at the front, tapping her tablet against her palm like a judge waiting to deliver a sentence. I tried to stay in the back, but it didn't take long for her to spot me. "Oh, Mr. Miller," she said with that politician's smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "You're welcome to sit, but please remember, only HOA members may participate." "Don't worry," I said. "I'm just here to make sure I'm not being slandered." A few chuckles rippled through the crowd. She glared at me, then launched into her presentation, a slideshow full of pastel homes and desert shrubs, followed by one massive image of my black gate. "This structure," she announced, "violates not only the architectural integrity of our neighborhood, but also poses safety concerns for children and emergency vehicles." Someone raised a hand. "Isn't that outside our jurisdiction?" Karen's smile tightened. "We believe the map boundaries were updated in 2018, bringing this property into our association's purview." I couldn't help it. I laughed out loud. "You believe? That's not how property law works." Gasps, murmurs, a couple of coughs. She ignored me and wrapped up with a dramatic call to action. "If we don't maintain standards, we all suffer." By the time I got home, I had a new letter taped to my gate. "Final warning, remove gate or legal action will be pursued." The date at the bottom was written in Karen's handwriting, in that aggressive cursive teachers use when they're 2 seconds from losing control. I emailed her again. "This is harassment. My attorney will be in touch." I didn't have an attorney yet, but it felt good to type. The next morning, I caught my neighbor Mark, nice guy, mechanic, 2 kids, standing by my driveway, looking uncomfortable. "Hey, just a heads up," he said, scratching his head. "Karen came by last night, said your gate blocks the line of sight for drivers, wanted me to file a complaint." "And did you?" He shook his head. "Hell no, but she's been making her rounds. Even told Mrs. Lawson that your fence might lower her appraisal value. By midweek, I noticed cars slowing down in front of my house. A couple of people even took pictures. One SUV stopped so long that I walked out to see what was going on, and the driver rolled down her window. "You're the guy with the illegal gate, right?" she said. "Karen says it's a community hazard." "Yeah," I replied. "Tell Karen to drive through it if she's that worried." She sped off, muttering something about attitude. I tried to ignore the circus, but ignoring Karen is like trying to ignore a wasp inside your car. That Friday, a white envelope arrived from the HOA's legal department. I opened it and nearly laughed coffee out my nose. It was a notice of assessment demanding payment of $300 in aesthetic fines. They were actually billing me for having the nerve to own something they couldn't control. I decided to get proactive. I called the city zoning office, explained the situation, and asked for official confirmation that my land was outside the HOA's reach. A bored-sounding clerk named Denise pulled up the records. "Lot number 124. "Yeah, that's not part of Desert Bloom. It's an independent parcel grandfathered out since 2005. "Could you put that in writing?" I asked. "Already done," she said. "Want me to fax it to them too?" I grinned. "You just made my week, Denise." Armed with that, I printed 3 copies, one for the HOA, one for my files, and one laminated just to spite Karen. I hand-delivered it to her mailbox, along with a sticky note that said, "Please update your delusions." For 2 blessed days, nothing happened. Then, one morning, I found 2 men standing at the edge of my driveway in orange safety vests, measuring tape in hand. "Can I help you?" I called out. "HOA inspection," one replied without looking up. "Checking setback compliance." I laughed. "On private land?" "Ma'am." He squinted at his clipboard, corrected himself. "Sir, our orders come directly from the president." "Tell the president to stay off my property," I said, pulling out my phone again to record. They didn't leave until I mentioned the word trespassing. By that evening, I saw new posts online from Karen's account. "We are addressing a persistent violation threatening community harmony. Please remain vigilant." Someone had commented a picture of my gate with the caption, "The eyesore." Fine. If they wanted a villain, I'd play the part. I turned on the floodlights, added another camera, and replaced my no trespassing sign with a custom-made one that read, "Private property, Karen not welcome." I figured if they wanted a war over aesthetics, I could fight dirty too. If I'd had any illusions that Karen might eventually back off, they disintegrated the following week like roadkill under an Arizona sun. It started on a Tuesday just after sunrise. I was making breakfast when my front camera pinged. I pulled up the live feed and saw 2 men in matching polos, one holding a clipboard, the other wielding what looked like a digital measuring wheel, walking around my driveway like it was a construction site. I stepped outside, coffee in hand. "You boys lose something?" Clipboard guy didn't even blink. "We're here on behalf of the Desert Bloom Homeowners Association, inspecting possible encroachments." "You mean you're trespassing?" I said calmly. "This is private property." The other guy muttered something about authorized access, but when I stepped closer and raised my phone, suddenly they remembered they had a dentist appointment or some such shit. I reported the incident to the sheriff's department, not because I thought they'd do much, but to get it on record. The deputy I spoke to was polite, but clearly tired. "Yeah, we've been getting more of these HOA versus homeowner cases lately," he said. "Technically, if they didn't step past your property line, it's hard to prosecute." "That's the thing," I said. "They did." "I'll log it," he promised. The next day, I came home from the grocery store to find a fresh scratch across my gate. Horizontal, deliberate, right where the camera couldn't see, subtle enough to call accidental, obvious enough to be a message. Then came the flyers. Community alert, non-compliant structure endangers children. Unauthorized construction, know your rights. Gate watch, neighbors against visual pollution. They were plastered on lampposts, slid under windshields, even tucked into dog poop bag. Dispensers around the park. Each flyer had some variation of my gate's photo, filtered to look even darker and more ominous, with anonymous quotes from concerned residents. And yet, none of those residents seemed brave enough to talk to me face to face. That Friday, while I was inspecting the scratch on the gate, a Prius pulled up. Out stepped Karen, dressed like she was headed to a tennis match, clipboard in one hand, phone in the other. "Good afternoon, Mr. Miller," she chirped like a rattlesnake in yoga pants. "You're trespassing," I replied flatly. "I'm documenting a violation," she said, taking pictures of the gate. "Multiple residents have expressed concern about the structural integrity of this installation." I tilted my head. "You want to inspect the bolts, Karen, or maybe take a gate selfie." She ignored me and snapped another photo. "I've already reported your harassment to the sheriff," I continued. "One more step on my land, and you'll be on video committing trespass." "Again." She smiled, one of those tight-lipped predator smiles, and walked backward toward the street like she thought she was the good guy in a cop drama. That night, someone dumped a pile of mulch in front of the gate. Not enough to trap my truck, but enough to force me to spend 20 minutes shoveling it away at dawn. No cameras had caught the act, but I could smell Karen's involvement like a bad perfume. I finally decided it was time to lawyer up. I'd met Sarah Kent years ago through a friend who ran into zoning hell trying to build a casita in his backyard. She wasn't cheap, but she was sharp. Real estate law was her playground, and HOA abuse was her specialty. We met at a cafe. I showed her the documentation, property lines, maps, gate permits, emails, photos, and flyers. She listened quietly while sipping an iced black coffee. When I finished, she leaned forward. "She's good," she said, "but not this good. Most of this is intimidation. The gate is legally permitted, and they've got no jurisdiction over you. We'll hit back." "How hard?" I asked. "Hard enough that she'll be Googling damage control before the weekend's over." She drafted a cease and desist and had it couriered to both Karen and the HOA board the next morning. Karen responded by forwarding the letter to the city council, claiming it was threatening and misogynistic. The city council's reply: "This is a civil dispute. Please resolve it through appropriate channels." Karen didn't take rejection well. That Sunday, she called the sheriff's department and reported that I was operating an illegal security system without signage and that I threatened a community leader with bodily harm. 2 deputies showed up, took one look at my signage, clearly visible, listened to the audio recording of our interaction, and apologized for wasting my time. Karen, of course, doubled down. By Tuesday, an inspector from the county building department arrived. "Anonymous complaint about a non-permitted gate structure," he said. I handed him the permits before he even stepped onto the property. He examined them, looked at the gate, then asked if he could take a photo. "For documentation," he said. "Make sure you get my good side," I told him. He grinned. "You're all good, Mr. Miller. Sorry for the hassle." I started a folder labeled Harassment Paper Trail. By the end of the week, it was an inch thick. Just when I thought Karen had exhausted her bag of tricks, she proved me wrong. If the previous weeks had been a passive-aggressive HOA rodeo, this was the part where the bull got loose, gored a couple bystanders, and shat on the mayor's podium. It started with a letter, thick envelope, certified. The kind of mail that smells like trouble before you even open it. Inside, a civil complaint filed against me by the Desert Bloom Homeowners Association. The highlights: alleged violation of community architectural standards, intentional obstruction of public access, and, my personal favorite, visual assault on the character of the neighborhood. Attached was a photo of my gate, annotated like it was a crime scene. Arrows pointing to the hinges, notes like unapproved materials and intimidating design. They even threw in a quote from an HOA handbook I'd never agreed to, never signed, and was about as legally binding to me as a Hogwarts spellbook. I called Sarah. She actually laughed. "They've got nothing. But this is good. Good. We're going to gut them. They've made it official. Now they're exposed." She immediately filed a response and counterclaim: harassment, defamation, trespassing, abuse of administrative power, and attempted interference with lawful use of property. It was the kind of document that makes HOA boards cry into their beige throw pillows. Karen naturally did not take kindly to being challenged in her sacred domain of self-assigned authority. Over the next few days, my property turned into a government attraction. First came a visit from the county's Environmental Services Division. "Mr. Miller," the woman began, clipboard shaking slightly, "we received a report of unauthorized land disturbance. Something about disrupting native migratory beetle routes." I blinked. "Beetles?" She nodded. "It says your gate construction affected the soil pattern." I showed her the untouched gravel beneath the gate. She stared at it like it had just insulted her intelligence. 2 days later, another inspector showed up, this time from the fire marshal's office. The complaint? That my gate impeded emergency vehicle access. He looked at the 20-foot wide entry and said, "This is bigger than the opening at our own station." He apologized and left. Then came someone from the State Department of Transportation. "Yeah, we got a complaint that your gate blocks a potential future public access road." "It's a private lot," I said. "Yeah, we figured." He took a photo and left. By the end of the week, I'd received 12 official notices from 9 different departments. 12. I lined them up on the inside of my garage wall like museum exhibits, each framed in a cheap plastic sheet protector. A neighbor walked by while I was hanging them and asked if I was opening a government-themed art installation. I said, "Yeah." I call it Karen's Last Stand. The crown jewel of the absurdity came when a local utility crew showed up claiming they needed to verify infrastructure compliance due to an anonymous report. They asked to dig up part of my driveway. I refused. They left a notice anyway. Sarah nearly choked on her coffee when I showed her. "This isn't just harassment anymore," she said. "This is coordinated." We did some digging, figuratively, not literally, because I wasn't about to give the city more excuses. Turns out, Karen had a brother working in the county zoning department. Suddenly, the surge in inspections made a lot more sense. Sarah drafted a formal letter to the County Ethics Commission. She laid it out in clear, biting legal language. Evidence of conflict of interest, abuse of authority, and retaliatory use of public resources for personal vendetta. Within 72 hours, we received a response. The commission acknowledged receipt and confirmed an internal inquiry. Karen must have gotten wind of it because the next morning she showed up again, this time with 2 men in suits. She stood on the sidewalk, smiling like a televangelist at a donation drive. I came out, phone in hand. "Let me guess. More complaints." The taller suit stepped forward. "Mr. Miller, we're with the HOA's retained legal counsel. We're here to offer a resolution." I cut him off. "I have counsel. Speak to her, and kindly get the hell off my sidewalk." He blinked. "Sir, there's no need for hostility." "No," I said, pointing at Karen. "That's her department." I watched them slink back into their luxury SUV. Karen stayed for a few extra seconds, staring at me like she was trying to melt my brain with pure rage. It didn't work. I smiled and waved. Then I walked back into my house, sat down at my desk, and opened the video feed from my cameras. I exported the footage, edited together every visit, every inspection, every flyer and bullshit complaint into a short, tight montage. Then I posted it online, titled it, "How a Gate Broke the HOA President." I didn't expect it to go viral, but by the next morning, it had over 50,000 views. The first court date arrived like a bad hangover, expected, unpleasant, and guaranteed to ruin your morning. It was scheduled for a Thursday because, of course it was, and held in one of those soulless county buildings where fluorescent lights go to die and hope takes the elevator down. Sarah and I showed up early. She looked sharp in a navy suit and low heels, clutching her laptop bag like a weapon. I had on my least wrinkled shirt and the kind of shoes that scream, "I'd rather be anywhere else." Karen was already there, standing near the bench like she owned it, flanked by 2 HOA board members and an overcompensating attorney in a $1,000 suit with a neck like a vulture's. As we walked in, she turned slowly, gave me a smile so sweet it could rot teeth, and whispered, "Ready to lose?" "Already did," I said. "You lost your mind weeks ago." The judge entered, a middle-aged woman with half-moon glasses and the demeanor of someone who'd seen 1,000 petty suburban vendettas and hated every one of them. We each took our seats. Karen's lawyer launched into a dramatic monologue about preserving the aesthetic sanctity of a tightly regulated community, and how my gate was a non-compliant structure that posed a legitimate threat to property values and neighborhood identity. It was like listening to someone recite Shakespeare while trying to ban a lawn gnome. Sarah stood up with her usual calm precision and began to systematically dismantle their fantasy. She presented certified zoning documents, the official parcel maps, my permit approvals, even email correspondence from city officials stating clearly that I was not and had never been within HOA jurisdiction. The judge held up the documents, glanced at Karen, and said dryly, "So the Plaintiffs' Association does not, in fact, govern the defendant's property." Karen's lawyer stuttered something about updated boundary proposals. Sarah seized the moment. "Your Honor, I'd also like to submit Exhibit D, a document used by the plaintiff to justify enforcement actions, which, as we'll prove, was altered." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Altered?" We handed over copies of a community zoning map, the original from the county, and Karen's version. In hers, a red marker had been added by hand, extending the boundary line to conveniently include my property. Sloppy. The courtroom went quiet. Karen's face lost a few degrees of color. The judge looked at her. "Mrs. Reed, who provided this version?" Karen fumbled. I was under the impression it was accurate. "Was it issued by a governing body?" "No," she said. "But it's based on planning discussions." Sarah cut in. "Your Honor, this was used in official communications as justification for harassment, fines, and inspection orders. We believe this constitutes falsification of material evidence." Karen's lawyer tried to object, but the judge waved him off. "I'm going to pause this hearing. Plaintiff's counsel, I expect an explanation. Defendant's counsel, I want a full report of all inspection activity and interactions logged with public agencies. If what you're saying is true, this may go beyond civil." We stepped outside for a recess. Sarah looked satisfied. "We just opened the door to criminal liability." "Think they'll walk through it?" I asked. "Karen's the kind of person who sprints." Sure enough, things unraveled fast. The next week, I got a call from a contact Sarah had at the zoning department. Apparently, internal review had already started. Karen's name was flagged in connection with multiple adjustments to zoning maps used in HOA enforcement. Meanwhile, one of the HOA board members, a guy named Glenn who looked like he cried during commercials, reached out anonymously. He sent us an audio recording from a closed board meeting. In it, Karen could be heard saying, "He doesn't know we don't control his lot. If we just keep applying pressure, he'll give in." Nobody wants to fight this kind of thing forever. Glenn's voice followed. Isn't that illegal? Karen. Only if he proves it. Sarah nearly burst into laughter when she heard it. That's game. She admitted to intentional abuse of power. We forwarded the recording to the court and added it to our growing file for the county prosecutor. Then came the cherry on top. A surprise document dump arrived in Sarah's inbox. Emails from HOA members leaked by another disillusioned neighbor. One thread from Karen herself read, I don't care what the map says. His fortress of a gate makes us look like a prison complex. If I have to bend the rules to fix that, so be it. The arrogance, the stupidity, the paper trail. Sarah stared at the screen and said, we're not just playing defense anymore. This is going to blow up in her face. We filed a formal motion requesting the court refer Karen's actions for criminal investigation, specifically for falsifying evidence, misrepresenting authority, and abusing public agencies via coordinated complaints. The HOA board, now fully spooked, issued a public statement. The board was unaware of actions taken by individual members that may have exceeded their legal authority. Translation, we're cutting her loose. Karen's once iron grip had turned to sand, and I was holding the bucket. The week after the court hearing, I began waking up every day expecting something new. Not the kind of new you hope for, like a winning lottery number or a thunderstorm in the desert, but the kind that comes wrapped in manila envelopes, posted by certified mail, and smells vaguely of municipal ink and pettiness. On Monday, I received a notice from the Department of Environmental Quality, alleged infraction, unauthorized alteration of water flow affecting desert flora. The gate, apparently, was disturbing cactus life. Tuesday brought a surprise. A code enforcement officer at my door. Complaint said I had unpermitted storage structures on my property. He pointed at my garden shed, which has been there since I bought the house. Built in the late 90s, I told him. Still got the serial plate. He shrugged, took photos anyway. Wednesday's delivery came in triplicate. Letters from the tax assessor's office, the county registrar, and the Office of Fire Prevention. One claimed I might be operating a commercial gate structure. Another questioned whether my property's legal use had changed. The fire notice warned that my gate might impede egress during a regional evacuation event. By Thursday, I had 12 separate complaints from at least 7 different agencies. I wasn't sure if I was being targeted or just becoming an unwilling urban legend. I pinned them all to my garage wall, 12 sheets of bureaucratic nothing, framed in clear sleeves like a madman's art gallery. I put up a sign over them that read, Karen's Greatest Hits. Neighbors started noticing. One guy walking his dog stopped and stared. This for real? Every sheet is a real government complaint, I said. He nodded slowly. That's kind of amazing. The HOA, meanwhile, had gone dead silent. No emails, no flyers, no Facebook crusades. Karen was still lurking, but she wasn't posting. Too much heat, I figured. Then came the knock. 2 men in plain clothes. One showed me a badge, County Investigations Division. Mr. Miller, we'd like to ask you a few questions about your interactions with the Desert Bloom HOA, the lead said. Sure, I replied. But you're going to need a bigger notepad. We sat in my living room for almost an hour. I walked them through everything. Photos, letters, the fake zoning map, the inspection circus, even the mulch incident. Sarah had already compiled it all into neat folders. They left with copies. We've received similar complaints from other homeowners, one of them said before leaving. But yours is thorough. That was Friday. By Sunday, someone leaked internal emails from the HOA board. The local neighborhood subreddit exploded. The emails detailed Karen's attempts to activate friendly inspectors and leverage family contacts to apply lawful pressure. Reddit did what Reddit does. Dug deeper. An anonymous post outlined Karen's connection to a zoning official, her brother, and listed all the departments that had coincidentally launched investigations against me in a 2-week span. It ended with a mic drop summary. This is what weaponized bureaucracy looks like. The post went viral. Monday morning, the sheriff's department showed up again. This time, they didn't ask questions. They delivered a subpoena. Karen was under official investigation for abuse of government resources, filing fraudulent reports, falsifying legal documentation, harassment via administrative channels, criminal trespassing based on camera footage, 5 charges. I read the paper 3 times just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Later that afternoon, I saw Karen for the first time in days. She was standing at the end of her driveway, arms crossed, watching news vans cruise through the neighborhood like vultures circling a buffet. She didn't wave. She didn't sneer. She just looked smaller. The once mighty queen of architectural purity, now dethroned by her own obsession. Sarah called to update me. The Ethics Commission opened a formal disciplinary review on her brother. Conflict of interest. He's on leave pending investigation. What about the HOA? I asked. They've issued a resolution distancing the board from her actions. You're officially not part of the association. Took them long enough. That night, I sat on my porch with a cold beer and watched the sun dip behind my gloriously non-compliant, perfectly legal gate. It had started as a barrier. Now it was a monument. By the time the criminal charges hit the local news, Karen had gone full ghost mode. No HOA emails, no flyers, no passive-aggressive Facebook posts about community integrity or unsightly personal choices. Just silence. Beautiful, echoing silence. I almost missed her daily nonsense. Almost. That week, I got a handwritten note in my mailbox. No envelope, just folded paper, delicate cursive. Please stop, this has gone too far. No name, no signature, but the paper smelled like eucalyptus lotion and self-righteousness, so I was pretty damn sure it came from Karen. Too far. You frame me, try to ruin my life, and now it's too far. I didn't reply. Instead, I started getting messages from neighbors. Quiet ones, the kind who never showed up to HOA meetings but paid their dues and hoped to be left alone. A man named Todd from 2 streets over stopped me while I was taking out the trash. Hey, he said, looking around like we were in a spy movie. I just wanted to say thanks for standing up to her. Didn't really plan to be the neighborhood rebel, I replied. She threatened to fine me $200 last year because my front door was the wrong shade of tan. What shade was it? Eggshell. We both laughed, and just like that, the current shifted. More messages came in. One woman brought over cookies and said, "You're the reason she's finally quiet." A retired couple offered to testify if things went to trial. Even Glenn, the HOA board member who leaked the recording, stopped by and dropped off a flash drive. Thought you'd want a copy. For the archives. I was starting to realize this wasn't just about a gate. Karen had ruled over this place for years. People hadn't liked it, but no one wanted to fight her. Until now. Sarah and I met again to plan the next moves. The criminal investigation was proceeding on its own, but there were still civil matters to address. We were preparing a formal lawsuit against Karen and the HOA for damages, legal fees, emotional distress, and punitive penalties related to the harassment and targeted campaign. Sarah said, "We'll probably settle, but I want this on record." Public record. She was enjoying this more than she let on. The HOA board, desperate to shed the stink, reached out to propose mediation. Their lawyer, now not the same vulture from before, offered a meeting at a neutral location, a conference room at a downtown law office. Sarah insisted on 2 conditions: full release from any future HOA jurisdiction and a formal letter of apology signed by every board member. We walked into the conference room like cowboys in a western. Karen wasn't there, probably under legal advice to keep her mouth shut. But the rest of the board looked like they were attending a funeral, quiet, pale, and exhausted. Their lawyer spoke first. "Our clients understand that errors in judgment were made and are prepared to offer restitution," Sarah replied. "We're not interested in vague remorse. We want terms, in writing." The room tensed. Papers slid across the table. Signatures followed. By the end of the hour, I had in my hand a signed statement from the HOA board acknowledging that my property was never under their authority, that enforcement actions taken were in error, that their actions may have caused undue harm, and, best of all, an official agreement that I would never again be subjected to HOA rules, decisions, or communications. It was like slapping a silver stake into the heart of a vampire. I didn't even gloat. Much. Later that evening, I stood in my driveway, drink in hand, looking at my now famous gate. Sarah had joked about getting it nominated for a preservation award. My inbox was still buzzing, new neighbors thanking me, a few reporters fishing for interviews, even a lawyer from another state asking for case notes to use against their HOA nightmare. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw her, Karen, standing across the street, alone, no clipboard, no allies, just her. She didn't shout, didn't march over. She just stood there and looked. I couldn't read her face. Not anger, not sadness. Something worse. Defeat. She turned and walked away. And that somehow felt heavier than all her nonsense combined. About 2 weeks after the dust settled, I got a call from Sarah. "They're filing the charges," she said. "All 5. County prosecutor just confirmed." I let that sink in while staring at the wall of framed violations still hanging in my garage. Felt poetic, really. Each sheet of absurdity now part of the evidence that buried her. Karen Reed was being criminally charged with falsifying documents, abuse of public resources, harassment, illegal access of government systems, and criminal trespass. Her brother, the zoning official, had quietly resigned the week before. The county released a statement so sterile and vague you could have mistaken it for a weather report, but the message was clear. They were cleaning house. The HOA board, now under temporary outside oversight, tried to rebrand. They launched a community survey asking what kind of initiatives people would like to see. Someone suggested mandatory wine tastings. Someone else said therapy goats. I suggested no more Karens. It got the most upvotes. I'd stopped worrying about the gate a while ago. It still stood, tall, defiant, well-oiled, and majestic, like some suburban drawbridge. A couple neighbors even asked for my contractor's info. One guy said he wanted a spite gate of his own, even though he lived in a cul-de-sac with no traffic. But something had shifted deeper than aesthetics. People had started talking, actually talking. There were porch beers. There were apologies. One woman, Clara, who had signed an early petition against me, brought over a pie and said, "I was scared to speak up. You made it easier." I told her the pie made it easier too. And me. I finally exhaled. Months of tension, lawyers, courtrooms, and bureaucratic insanity had hardened me, but they also gave me something I hadn't expected: community, real community. The kind built not on matching fences or fake harmony, but mutual respect and the shared knowledge that authority isn't something you just hand over to the loudest person with a clipboard. I kept one of the flyers Karen had plastered everywhere, the one with my gate in black and white, captioned "Neighborhood Menace." I framed it and hung it in the hallway. Right beneath it, I put the HOA's signed apology. Sometimes people need a reminder of how far crazy can go when no one stands up. As for Karen, last I heard, she'd lawyered up and sold her house. Rumor is she moved to a 55-plus gated community in another county, one with an HOA that actually did own everyone's soul. She'll fit right in. Sarah and I met for drinks after the final hearing. She handed me an envelope with the court's decision on the civil side. Full reimbursement of legal costs, plus a tidy sum for punitive damages. "You could install a second gate," she joked. "Nah," I said. "I think I'll buy a patio couch and just enjoy this one." We clinked glasses, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like the ground beneath me wasn't shifting. It was solid, owned, mine.